The 2023 mango season is over, and it seemed like a good idea to give you sort of a recap of the season. Usually our first two varieties that start the mango season are Dwarf Hawaiian and Rosa. This year, Rosa was late to the table. Our first two varieties were actually Dwarf Hawaiian and Ugly Betty. It was just a few of the Ugly Betty on one of our trees, but it was right there with Dwarf Hawaiian. Sort of crazy. But then we had like a long period where we were anxiously anticipating mangoes, but not actually getting them. And it wasn't until the end of May that mango season really kicked in, which is a little bit later than it normally starts. One of the very remarkable things about this season is that we had a lot of mangoes. And the same was true for every grove in South Florida that we heard of. We just had a lot of mango varieties, of course, but also it seemed like each tree had a lot of mangoes on them. So that was wonderful. We made a lot of people happy, I hope. But sometimes when that happens, it can affect the next year a little bit. So we're hoping that we still have a strong year next year. And we had mangoes all summer long, of course, and our final mangoes were in the beginning of September. So generally, a very good year. We had new varieties coming into production and just a lot of mangoes on the established trees in the grove. Some of our varieties were more productive than others, and so here are the real standout varieties of 2023. The first one is Carrie. Of course, we have a lot of Carrie trees, but we had a lot of mangoes on each tree. It was a great year for Glen also. Just the conditions were great for it. We had a lot of fruit and it was really good. Another one of the crowd favorites is lemon meringue, and fortunately this year we had a very good lemon meringue season, and it actually extended for a rather long period. At the end we were just picking like one fruit per tree, but anyway, we had a lot of nice lemon meringue. Of course, Kit is a very productive tree, and it was true to form this year also. Lots of Kit mangoes, and that's a late season one. And then, of course, Duncan. That's a very productive tree, very reliably productive, and we had a lot of nice Duncan fruit. Then we have Hayden trees that are like 100 years old. A lot of them have been cut back a lot and top worked in a lot of cases, but still we had a lot of Hayden fruit. One of the varieties that originated in Australia also had a very big year, the Kensington. A variety, a South Florida variety that had a nice year. Another one was Jakarta. Jakarta's a big fruit. It's fiberless, sweet, very popular. And so we have 3 Jakarta trees, and we got a lot of fruit from those trees. One variety that we don't actually have a lot of in the grove, is just one part of one tree, is Southern Blush. And even with that, like half of a tree of Southern Blush, we had a lot of nice fruit. So, good year for Southern Blush. Then another variety that we don't have a lot of, it's just one branch or two of a tree, is Marlis, but we got lots of Marlis fruit. A Southeast Asian variety that we have 2 trees of is Pim Seng Mun, and that made a lot of fruit also. And finally, this one might be the standout winner, was Tess Pollock. Tess Pollock, each tree, we have 2 trees of it. Each tree had, the first tree had like maybe 100 fruit, and the other tree, I'm guessing, had 200 fruit on it. Just an amazingly productive variety. So all of the varieties seem to do well, but those are just sort of the standouts that I can think of at this point. So we can't talk about the best fruiters without talking about the worst ones. And, not every year is strong for every variety, and here are the varieties that really didn't have the best year. And the first variety is the best mango. Last year we had a lot of best fruit. This year I think we had a handful. It was really amazing, the difference between last year and this year. Another variety that normally produces well for us that I think we got maybe 2 or 3 fruit of is Bailey's Marvel. And we actually have 2 trees of Bailey's Marvel, and it was just not the year for Bailey's Marvel. And right next door to Bailey's Marvel in the grove is Bombay. Bombay had 0 fruit. So very unusual. We usually have a decent crop of both of those, but this year, nothing. Another variety that's normally very productive, but wasn't this year, is Graham. We did have some Graham fruit. Graham is seedling of Julie, very popular. People in Jamaica very familiar with it. It's large fruit, very nice, and yet it was very rare this year. Then there was guava, and guava mango is really tasty. And that is just going by memory because we didn't have any guava fruit this year. Normally we have a pretty good supply of it. I have it on 1 branch plus 1 small tree, and no guava. Another variety that didn't have its best year is ice cream mango. We actually have 2 ice cream mango trees. One of them had some fruit, and the other one, I think, had maybe 3 fruit on it. So hopefully next year will be a good year for ice cream mango. A late season variety that we were hoping that we'd get a good crop of is Palmer. And Palmer just had a few fruit. Last year it was crazy loaded. This year, just a handful of fruit. Another variety that did not do well this year for us is Pickering. Pickering has a reputation of being crazy productive. Well, apparently it didn't get that message. At least our tree didn't. We had very few fruit on our tree. So hopefully next year will be a great year for Pickering. Then another variety that we're used to getting a really decent crop of is Promkymia. This year, I would say that we got a handful of fruit, but I think that might be exaggerating. Just very few fruit. Again, hopefully next year will be a better year for Promkymia. A really nice variety that isn't often grown in this area is Ryan. And we actually have 2 Ryan trees because I converted a tree recently to Ryan, and then we had our original tree. Ryan's a nice big fruit, very nice flavor, and unfortunately, really a bad year for Ryan. We're hoping that next year, with these 2 nice trees growing, that we'll have a really good crop, but this year very few people got to try Ryan. And then there's Sunrise. Sunrise, again, is a really nice fruit. It's not as commonly grown as some of the other varieties. And last year we had a nice crop on Sunrise. This year, not so much, just a few fruit. Then another variety that we really didn't see much fruit on was St. Maui. And, that variety is planted right up front next to the sales area. So a lot of people got to enjoy the really pretty foliage. There's lots of nice leaves, but really not much fruit at all. And then finally, Ugly Betty was really not a good producer this year. We had our one small tree that had early Ugly Betty, but our large tree that we were really counting on had just very few fruit. I think there might have been 2 on that tree, where the small tree was doing all the work. I mean, it accounted for most of our Ugly Betty fruit, not only the early season ones, but then also the later season Ugly Betty. One of my favorite things about mango season is tasting varieties that are fruiting for the first time in the grove. And some of those varieties are actually named, and I grafted them in the grove, and finally they produced fruit this season. And those varieties include like creme brulee. It was really a delicious fruit. I didn't really know what to expect, because creme brulee doesn't say mango to me, but very nice, very sweet mango. Another variety that we just had 1 or 2 fruit of for the first time was Karen Michelle. Really delicious mango. Mamu fruited for the first time. That was lovely. It was a small fruit, very sweet, Southeast Asian, and that tree was compact too, so it definitely had a lot of things going for it. A variety that I have been growing for years without getting fruit finally fruited this year, and that is Kuklam Krong. And that variety, a Southeast Asian variety, very sweet. And there's this very interesting taste that sort of lingers in your mouth after you've eaten it. That was a nice fruit. Another variety that I've been growing for a few years but finally produced this last season is Rumani. Rumani has like a round fruit. The tree is pretty, that seems fairly compact, and the fruit were really late season. That was in our final 4. Fiberless fruit, classic Indian flavor, reminded me a little bit of Neelam. Then there were other varieties that I've been eagerly anticipating. Ceci Love is one that has a tremendous reputation. It finally fruited for the first time, just had a couple fruit, and yes, it was delicious. Super Alfonso is another one that has a great reputation. We have tasted it from other groves before, but this year, first time in our grove, and it was really good. Another variety that's new to us that fruited for the first time this year was Francis Hargrave. The fruit, we had no idea what it was going to taste like, and it was, fairly small fruit, not overly small, but not a large fruit. Really, really nice flavor. Hoping to get a lot more fruit next year on that. We had a lot of what we are now calling a mystery mango, because don't know if it has a name or not. It's a variety that I grafted probably ages ago, and it might be a seedling tree. We don't know, but very tasty, very productive tree. Nice growth habit. So looking forward to more next season. We had a lot this season for a small tree, and also we're sort of hoping to find out more about the fruit. Possibly it's already a named variety, but I don't know. Another variety that was really good and fruited for the first time this year for us was Mandalay. And Mandalay is a variety that Maurice Kong brought into the U.S. several years ago. I think it was in the early 2000s, possibly. And he actually brought that from Myanmar. It was part of the group that he brought that included Popular, which is now known as lemon meringue in Florida. Lots of really nice varieties, and the Mandalay was really a big, good surprise. The fruit were large, no fiber, had nice sort of a mango flavor, but then there was a flavor of passion fruit in the fruit also. So looking forward to more of that next year. And finally, there were 3 varieties that fruited for the first time here that also originated here. And so those are extra fun for me. The first variety is a small variety that I think I ate 90% of the production from that one branch of the tree. It's just a small variety that is really tasty. I could grab it and it was a quick snack. I, of course, figured that it had between 0 and 5 calories per, but probably not. So Scott tried that variety and he said, well, that's lovely. And so we're calling it Lovely. The next variety was actually a seedling of Mulgoba that had been growing under our really large old Mulgoba tree, and it produced exactly 1 fruit this year. And so it wasn't quite ready to eat when I saw Scott, so I gave it to him. And so he's actually the only person who has ever tasted that variety. So I decided that Scott should name the fruit, and he was very impressed with that fruit and thought that the best name was Divine for that. Monty, which also was known as Mound, it's a variety that is growing on the mound, so of course that was why we called it Mound to begin with, but Monty is sort of the next iteration of that name. So we have Monty and Lovely and Divine that all join the ranks this year. So in general, we had a lot of delicious mangoes this season. There are 3 significant standouts though. These are mangoes that originated here, truly tropical, and we had more than one of the fruit to offer to people. It's tough when you have only like one fruit and you have maybe 2 people that taste it, but we actually had a fairly significant amount of mangoes of these varieties, so we did get a lot of feedback from customers. And the first one we probably had the most of was what we initially called Mound Mango, but is now Monty. So Monty was just a very popular variety, lots of people asking about that, so we're trying to make trees of that, of course. The second one is Carpe Diem. That one started producing a year or 2 ago, but this year we had enough fruit to sell to several people. That got a lot of good reviews. And finally, this was the first year that we had any lemoneche to sell, and we had some to sample too, and that was extremely popular. So those 3 varieties are just part of several that we have developed here at Truly Tropical, but they are standouts, and it was a great way to sort of wrap up the season. Lemoneche was one of our last varieties, and it had a huge impact. So there's really not much point to having great mangoes if you can't have great customers too, and we have really wonderful customers. It was really nice to see all sorts of people this year, and thank you very much for your support. It sort of is a very important part of the reason why we do all this work on mangoes. Thank you for your support for 2023, and we hope to see you next year.